I'm Jeanette and I'm the designer behind, and in this video I'll be talking through the Caprice Beanie, which is a top-down brioche, half brioche hat, worked in either DK weight or fingering weight, plus a strand of suri alpaca or mohair. I'll be demoing all the techniques that I've used in this, starting with the cast on, how to work the brioche stitches and increases, as well as the bind off. It's probably a good idea to follow along with the pattern, otherwise some places might not make a lot of sense. You can download the pattern at the link that's in the description below. So let's take a closer look. As this beanie is worked from the top down, we need a cast on that provides a seamless closed cast on that we can then knit around. One of those is Judy's magic cast on, which I will be using, but there are alternatives such as the Turkish cast on, or you could use a provisional cast on and then simply graft stitches together. But here is a Judy's magic cast on, which is my go-to for this type of cast on. So make a slip knot and place it on, I call it the top needle, and then we place our left hand or the passive hand in the long tail cast on formation, but instead of doing long tail cast on, we'll simply be wrapping the opposite yarn around the needle, like so, to create a loop, and until we have the required number of stitches on both needles. It feels a bit strange at the start, because if you're used to long tail cast on, you'll want to do something more than you have to do. But it's very simple. Now I've got the required number of stitches. I have to twist both strands so that when I knit the first stitch, it doesn't just come off and disappear on me. So another thing that I found from long tail cast on, because I typically use two needles to do the cast on, holding them at the same time to loosen the stitches, I have to pull one out this way so I can start knitting. But for the Judy's magic cast on, you need to make sure that all the stitches on both needles stay on the cable. Oh, and it's really difficult to do this on straight needles, so I wouldn't even try. And here we go. We just simply knit the first round. I'm knitting continentally, but this works also for English style knitters. And when I've done the first needle, I simply pull on to get all the stitches back on the needle and work in the other direction. Now, the interesting part about working the second needle is that the first stitch is the slip knot, so it will leave a little tiny bump on the side, but that will disappear after weaving in the ends, and when it's barely noticeable. But the rest of the stitches are mounted the other way than they normally would, so you have to knit through the back loop to get them back in the correct orientation. And notice that they're not twisted, they just, typically a stitch would sit on the needle in this direction, but due to the way we cast them on, they are mounted in the other, or they're orientated in the other direction. Right, so that's the first round done. And it should look something like this. It says to place marker for the beginning of round, but technically we're not going to be working in the round because the round is too small to practically make it possible. We instead will be working back and forth on the two needles. So the marker on the needle would just be wandering around the cable on the side, which for me personally, I find that a little bit annoying. So what I recommend doing is just placing a locking marker in the work to mark the side that is the beginning, And that whenever we get there, we know that we've finished the round. When we have reached the full circumference of the beanie, that's when we truly start working in the round, and we can place a real marker to mark the beginning of round. But until then, we can just make do with this. And as we increase the length of our work, we can simply take it out and move it up closer to where the needles are. Right, so the first setup round is where we set up the brioche stitches. So it says to slip one with yarn over. We make sure that the yarn is in front of work, and we simply slip the stitch purlwise along with the yarn, and then make sure the yarn ends up at the back of the work. And on the active needle, or on the right hand needle, we end up with a slipped stitch and a yarn over. And then we bring the yarn back to front to purl a stitch, and we can leave it at the front because the next one is again slip one with yarn over. And we do this around, slip one with yarn over and purl one. So we have the other needle left to do. I apologize, I cannot demonstrate this for the English style knitters, but it shouldn't be too different or too difficult to figure out how you need to work it. So again, yarn is at the front, and I'm slipping one with yarn over. I am purling one, slipping one with yarn over, purling one, slipping, purling, slipping, purling. Now we ended up with a lot more stitches than we had at the previous round, but in brioche, this stitch that has the yarn over is counted as one stitch, because in the next round we will be knitting them together to get the count back. And these little yarn overs are what make that brioche V and the brioche stitch its look. Right, so the exciting part is now the increases. As I said, we never count these as two stitches, so this actually is one stitch with the yarn over. And to do a brioche knit or BRK, we would just simply knit through both of them and end up with one stitch. But in the pattern, it just so happens that our first stitch is a brioche increase, so it's BRK, yarn over BRK, and here it's how I would do it. BRK, but do not slip the original stitch of the needle yet, because we need to do a yarn over, and then another BRK through the same set of stitch with a yarn over. And we let go of the original stitch, and we end up with 3 stitches instead of 1. Now I'm gonna purl this one, and here I have to do a simple BRK, so I just simply knit the stitch with its yarn over and purl, knit the stitch with its yarn over and purl, and I come to the place where I need to do another increase, and again I BRK without letting go of the original stitch, yarn over, BRK, and I have 3 stitches, and purl, and I'll do exactly the same on the other needle. So BRK, yarn over, BRK, purl, BRK, purl, BRK, purl, and last increase, BRK, yarn over, BRK, and purl. And we have increased 8 stitches, and that is 2 new stitches on each side of each of the 2 needles. And once we're done with the BRK round, where we get back to the, so to speak, normal number of stitches, As brioche is a 2-row repeat, we will always enjoy a very relaxing and not thinking about anything round off slip, one with yarn over and purl, slip, one with yarn over and purl, slip, purl around. And later we'll have some stitch markers in there, and as we encounter them we'll just slip them and move all the way around in that fashion. Slip, purl, slip, purl, slip, purl, slip, purl. You can't really see the brioche yet until you've worked a few more rows, but trust me, we are on the right track. Here comes a round that's probably the most important to really focus on and make sure we place the markers in the correct places. Otherwise, the shape of the increases will not work out the way we desire. So round 3 is brioche increase, BRK yarn over BRK. And immediately after that, we place a marker. This time we place it on the needles because it'll stay there. And we purl one, purl, and we need to do a BRK purl 4 times. So BRK purl once, BRK purl twice, BRK purl 3 times, BRK purl 4 times, and we place another marker on the needle. We do a brioche increase and purl, and we have to place another marker. So this time the marker would end up being between the 2 needles, and I will end up in that annoying situation, which is why I will move this one stitch onto the other needle, just for the purpose of keeping this marker that I'll be placing here on the needle instead of wandering around the cable on its own. So I will do the last purl stitch again and place a marker. And I have to do another brioche increase then. BRK yarn over BRK, purl 1, and again BRK purl 1 4 times. So BRK purl 1 once, BRK purl 1 twice, BRK purl 1 3 times, BRK purl 1 4 times. And this time I do the increase before I place the marker, BRK yarn over BRK, and I place a marker and purl 1. This has now set up the beanie in a way that lets me work increases a little bit different on the front of the hat and the back of the hat. So on the front of the hat we'll have some brioche columns going straight in through the middle, and the increases will be coming out of the sides. Whereas on the back of the hat, we won't see those lines vertically down the middle. We'll be increasing on the side of the hat at all times, which will help us tell the difference between the front and the back of the hat. And as before, after the BRK and increases, we just enjoy a slip and one with yarn over, slip, one with yarn over, and purl. And this is where I said we'll be encountering the markers. We'll just slip them as we go. Slip and purl, slip and purl, slip and purl. Here's a marker, slip and purl, slip, and so on. And now in round 5 we come to the round that we'll be repeating over and over again until we have, well, in terms of the increase round, we'll knit one increase round, one plain without increase round. But the important aspect of this round is that we've placed the markers in such a way that on the first needle we'll be doing the increases just outside the marked off area, and on the other needle we'll be doing the increases just inside the marked area, and which is why it's written in a way that it can be repeated for as many increase rounds as your size needs, and that's explained in the pattern. So we'll have to BRK and purl to one stitch before the marker, and in this case, because we have slipped with yarn over, that counted as one stitch, and we've arrived already at one stitch before the marker, at which point we do the increase. So BRK, yarn over, BRK, and slip marker, purl one, and repeat the BRK purl to marker, BRK purl, BRK purl, BRK purl. In this case we are on the other side of the marked area, and we have to slip the marker before we do the increase, BRK purl, BRK, and continue purling and BRKing to the marker on the other needle. I suggest placing lifelines every so often, because if for any reason you forget to slip the marker here before you do the increase, or don't follow exactly the instruction, you will have made a mistake that's quite noticeable, and you will not be happy with yourself. So lifelines is probably a very good idea, because it is hard to fix brioche even for the seasoned knitter. And I will continue on the second needle to purl, BRK purl to marker, and on this other needle we slip the marker first, then do the increase for the first marker, and we purl, BRK purl to one stitch before the marker, at which point we will do the increase before slipping the marker. Here we are, BRK, yarn over, BRK, then we slip the marker and the purl last stitch, and we have completed round 5, which is then repeated whenever we need an increase. And as you go along, you'll see that on the front needle, these are the columns that will be continuing straight, and the increases come out of the sides. And here we just get new columns and they all go down. I have now finished all the increases, and this is what it looks like. I've removed all the markers and placed a real beginning of round marker. In the middle of the increase section, you'll notice that the pattern says to slow down the cadence of the increases. So instead of doing it on every second round, you'll be doing it on every 5th of 6 round sections for a few times depending on your size. This is what the back of the hat looks like. and this is the front of the hat. It is also fully reversible. I think I personally prefer the wrong side of this hat, but yeah, both sides are wearable on the outside. I've still got a long way to go until the finished hat, but this is the beauty of the top-down hat, is that you can try it on as you go and decide how long you want to make it, whether you want to add extra fabric so you could fold, how much of the fold you want to add, etc. And once you've made that decision, you might want to know of this really cool bind off technique. That is, if you want to bind off on the right side but make the wrong side look good, especially if you're folding and if you're wearing the wrong side on top like this. So you work on the right side, but you want the wrong side of the bind off to look good. It's called Grandma's favorite bind off because you work the stitches in a way that mounts them in the opposite orientation. And so by purling two together in the grandma style, so instead of going up there to get the yarn, you wrap it this way and slide it back, and again just purl two together grandma style and slide it back, purl two together grandma style, slide it back. I can try and show it the English style. Wrap it this way so that it mounts in the opposite direction. Slide back, wrap it this way, and slide back. Obviously keep the cast off or bind off slightly on the loose side, because otherwise it might be tricky to get it stretched enough to fit around your head. And this is what it looks like on the wrong side of work. It looks like just as if it was done on the right side. And that's it for this demonstration. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy making this hat. I can't wait to see.